Hi everybody, this is Laura, City Scrapper. Thank you so much for joining me on my channel. Today I have a little bit of a different type of video for you. I'm going to be using my gel plate and some Shimmerz Color Splash sprays to make a number of papers that I'm going to be using for my scrapbooking layouts. I've already used the papers that I make in today's video for two different layouts, and I thought I would show you how I make them. In the past, I've had quite a few comments about how people have gel plates, but they haven't used them yet. You really don't need a lot of supplies. This is a 12 by 14 inch gel plate. I have a brayer. I have some 80-pound smooth white cardstock, one stencil, and a couple of different colors of Shimmerz Color Splash sprays. These prints might be a little different from some other gel prints that you see. They are much more subtle so that I can use them for my purposes with scrapbooking, but you could use them for lots of different things. To start this page off, I used Squeeze the Day and Back in the Saddle. Squeeze the Day is a yellowish color, Back in the Saddle is gold, and I liked that combination. I'm using some really inexpensive white acrylic paint from the craft store. This is from Craft Smart, but you could use any inexpensive paint to do this. So I use the brayer. I spread the white paint all over the gel plate. Then I put down my stencil. I use a paper towel to lift up some of the white paint. And now I'm putting that same print back down on the gel plate again, and I'm pulling it off. And it's very subtle, but you can see the stencil work in the background. If you want a more traditional gel print with more contrast between the colors, you could of course use different colors. My whole goal here is to create papers that are not just flat cardstock but are interesting, but I can use them in backgrounds. I use them to back cut files, and they look so much more interesting when they have pattern and variation in them. For this print, I again use the Squeeze the Day, but I added in some flashy flamingo, and then I again included the Back in the Saddle gold color. Using my brayer and spreading them around, and then once again I'm going to press down the paper and I'm going to pull my print. One of the great things about gel printing is if you don't like the way a print comes out, you can just add another layer to it, and I have very rarely thrown away gel prints because of the ability to keep adding to them. Now I'm going to add another layer to that print. I'm again spreading out the white acrylic paint. And once again, I'm going to use that same stencil that I used earlier. I hadn't been using my 12 by 12 inch stencils until I started using this gel plate. Now I'm using them all the time. This stencil was made by the Crafters Workshop by Jenny Bolin, and it's called Netting. So far, I made two different pulls using the yellow and some other colors, and here I'm showing you how they both look after I add that second layer. I'm going to continue adding more layers to some prints that I already pulled. I believe that this was the very first pull that I made in this video. I mixed together some Back in the Saddle with the white acrylic paint. I put down my stencil, and now I'm going to use this background to lift up the color that's between the areas of the stencil. So now I have several papers that I can use for a sun cut file that I'm going to be backing. Now I want to create some blue papers. I want some darker blue papers and some lighter blue papers. I'm using some other colors of Color Splash. They're called Sea Breeze and Swoon in the Lagoon. I also added some of the Back in the Saddle, and I used some bubble wrap to create some texture on the background. I like the way this looks, but I wanted this to be a little bit darker, so I add several more layers of color to this background. I'm again using those same colors that I used before, and I'm pressing my paper down again. Once again, I pull the paper up, and I like the way this looks. I think it's looking a little bit darker, and I love all of that variation in the background. I'm going to add some more color to the gel plate. I'm using those same colors again. And I have kind of a mess there with the white paint, but that doesn't matter. That will all come out later on. I used a mat that I had. I think that's for drying dishes, but I like the way it creates some texture. So I once again pulled that same print, and you could see that the color is getting darker, but it's still interesting. It's not flat color. There was one part of this session that did not record. I made another pull that was using some more of the pinks and the yellows, but instead of coming out more pink, it looks a little bit more of a darker salmon, and I'll show you that at the end of the video. I wanted to have a lighter blue piece of paper, so this time I mixed together the Color Splash with the white acrylic paint. I'm using the same mat that I used before for some texture, and now I'm pressing down my paper for the first pull. And I like the way that this looks. I love the texture, and I love the way there's so much variation. I wanted the page to be a little bit lighter though, so I'm going to add some more white paint to the gel plate. I spread it around with my brayer, and I'm going to bring my stencil back in again. I put the stencil on top, but this time I use another pull that I made previously to pick up some of that white paint. I used a paper towel before to lift up the white paint. I think it's so much better though to use a piece of paper, because that way you don't waste any paint. And then I have made some of my favorite prints that I've ever made by picking up that extra paint from a stencil. So you never know what's going to happen with the gel plate. I add a little bit more white paint to this pull. I'm trying to get towards some very light blue colored papers, and by adding layers of white, I'm getting the prints to look a little bit lighter. I again spread out the white paint. I add the texture from the mat, and I'm going to pull this piece of paper once again. You can control some aspects of gel printing. However, I don't think you ever know exactly what it's going to look like. I'm very happy with the way these papers are coming. This is exactly the look that I was going for. Now I'm adding a little bit more white paint to the gel plate and pressing one of my prints down on the plate again in, once again, an attempt to lighten the blue up a little bit. I could make the whole print look much lighter very quickly by adding a lot of white to the print at once, but instead I chose to add light layers of the white. I thought that it would be a little more interesting to do it that way. That way there are lots of layers that are building up on each other, all of them with different texture and variation in color. I decided to add one last layer of color using the white paint that was on my gel plate and underneath it. And now these are all of the prints that I pulled on this day. Sometimes I just start printing for fun, but in this case, I knew exactly what colors I wanted to make in order to back a cut file and also cut out some flowers. So I'm going to include pictures of both of my layouts at the end of this video so you can see what I use all of these papers for. The process videos for both of these layouts will be on my channel this week. Thank you so much for watching. I really hope that you enjoyed it. And if you would like to pick up some Color Splash sprays, you could check out the Shimmerz website. The link to Shimmerz paints is in the description box. When you place your order with Shimmerz paints, if you mention my name in the comments, you'll get a free gift. I hope you have a great day, and I'll see you again soon. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.